Look down, 1,000 feet of nothing below your boots. The desert floor is so far down the camels look like ants. And above you, somehow above you, is a city, carved into the cliff, hanging off the rock like a wasp's nest. This isn't one place, it's a pattern. From the caves of Mount Carmel to the gorges of Lebanon, the people of the ancient Levant did something that should be impossible. They went up, not for the view, not for the prayer, to survive. See, the Levant is the most fought-over strip of land in human history. Egyptians burned it, Assyrians flayed it, Babylonians dragged its people away in chains. Romans crucified anyone who resisted. Byzantines hunted heretics. Crusaders massacred whole cities. Mamluks razed villages. Ottomans took your sons. Armies on the valley floor, every century, for 10,000 years. So the people did the only thing left. They climbed, and they built. Hidden fortresses, monasteries glued to cliff walls, cave cities you can only reach by rope. This is vertical archaeology, and what we're about to look at isn't a style of building. It's the architecture of a people who never ever stopped being hunted. Start with the oldest layer, Mount Carmel. Northern Israel, a long limestone ridge that runs from the Mediterranean down toward the Jordan Valley. Halfway up the western face, there's a wadi called Nahal, the Valley of Caves. 4 hollow mouths in the rock, staring down at the plain. 12,000 years ago, before pyramids, before farming, these caves were home. The Natufians lived here, hunter-gatherers on the edge of becoming the first farmers on Earth. Now look at where they chose to live. Not on the easy ground, not by the spring, halfway up a cliff face. Why? 2 reasons. The first is what was below them. The Levant in the Ice Age was megafauna country. Aurochs the size of pickup trucks, cave lions, leopards, hyenas with bone-cracking jaws. The cave mouth, 15 meters up a sheer wall, was the only door no predator could climb through at night. The second reason is what they could see. From those caves, the Natufians watched the great herds, gazelle, deer, moving across the coastal plain. They didn't have to hunt blind. They had a balcony over the food, 1,000 feet of nothing, and a clear line of sight to every meal for the next 10,000 years. We call this the start of civilization, but really civilization started with a view. Now jump 3,000 years forward, Bronze Age, Hazor, Megiddo, Lachish, Jericho. These were proper kingdoms, not cave cities. They had walls, chariots, kings. They wrote in cuneiform. They traded with Egypt and the Hittites for tin and gold. So how were they vertical? Look at any one of these places today and you see a giant artificial hill, a Tel. Tel Megiddo rises 70 meters above the plain. The mound isn't natural. It is the city. 3,000 years of mud brick stacked on mud brick. Every generation building on top of the bones of the last. Because every century somebody came and burned it. Hyksos chariot raids, Egyptian campaigns by Thutmose III, the Sea Peoples, Assyrian sieges, Babylonian deportations. The city fell. The survivors rebuilt on the ash. Bronze Age vertical archaeology in slow motion. These cities climbed by refusing to move. Fast forward 10,000 years. The Romans are in the Levant now. The empire is at its peak. And out in the Judean desert, a moonscape of cracked limestone east of Jerusalem, they're staring up at the same problem the cave lions had. There's a thing in the sky they cannot reach, Masada, a flat-topped mountain alone in the desert. Sheer cliffs on every side, a vertical drop of 1,400 feet, and on top, a palace, a fortress, a city in the clouds. This was Herod the Great's panic room. The Mad King of Judea built it around 30 BC, when he was certain Cleopatra was coming to kill him. He carved palaces into the northern cliff face, terraces hanging off the rock, and stacked the whole plateau with grain warehouses, weapons, barracks. But here's the thing, Herod didn't invent any of this. Bronze Age Canaanites had been carving water systems out of bedrock for 2,000 years before him. Megiddo's underground water tunnel, Hazer's well shaft cut 120 feet straight down. Geezer's water system. Herod just stole the Bronze Age trick and put it on a cliff. The real engineering miracle is the water. There is none up here. The desert below gets 2 inches of rain a year. So Herod's engineers cut 12 enormous cisterns into the rock and ran plaster channels down the cliffs to catch the flash floods. The rare, violent rainstorms that turn the dry wadis into rivers for 20 minutes once a year. They turned weather into a weapon. 100 years after Herod died, 1,000 Jewish rebels seized Masada from the Romans. They held it for 3 years. From up there, they could see the entire 10th Roman legion camped in the dust below, looking up at them and unable to climb. So the Romans built the ramp, a vast wedge of earth and stone pushed up the western flank of the mountain. Day after day in the killing heat, you can still see it. The ramp is the largest single act of Roman engineering anyone has ever pointed a camera at. When the battering rams finally reached the top, the rebels were dead. Mass suicide. The fortress was empty, 1,000 feet of nothing. And the Romans had to build 1,000 feet of something just to get up there. Now move forward 500 more years. Same desert, different threat. The Romans are gone. Christianity has won. And in the Judean wilderness, something strange is happening. Men are walking out of the cities, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Caesarea, and they are climbing into the cliffs on purpose to live there alone forever. They're called the Desert Fathers, and they invent something brand new: Christian monasticism. The rule was simple: get away from the world, get up. Closer to God means higher than the world. But here's the secret: they weren't the first. The Israelites had used these same Judean caves 1,000 years earlier. King David hid from Saul in the cave of Adullam. The prophet Elijah hid from Queen Jezebel in a cave on Mount Horeb. The Maccabees hid from the Seleucid Greeks. The caves were already a refuge 2,000 years before any monk got here. The Desert Fathers just inherited the Bronze Age trick, so they did. 2 monasteries in particular are still there. Mar Saba, founded by a monk named Sabas in the year 483 AD. It hangs off the side of the Kidron Valley like a hive, blue domes and stacked cells clinging to vertical rock. From the canyon floor, it looks like the cliff is growing the building. And St. George of Qadisha, even more impossible, built into the wall of a narrow gorge called Wadi Kelt. Carved cells, hanging gardens on tiny ledges. For most of its history, the only way in was a rope. Imagine being a monk in the year 600. You join this monastery, they lower you down a cliff in a basket, and you don't come back up, ever. Your job is to copy the Gospels by candlelight, grow vegetables on a 6-inch ledge, and listen to the wind. When raiders came, Persians who sacked Mar Saba in the year 614 and slaughtered 44 monks. Arabs after them, Crusaders, Mamluks who razed entire monasteries to the foundation, Ottomans who came for the silver. The monks would pull the rope up. The monastery vanished into the cliff, 1,000 feet of nothing below. And they outlasted every empire that tried to erase them. These monasteries are still there, still in use. 1,500 years of monks in a row, refusing to come down. But the most extreme version of this story is in Lebanon. There is a gorge in the northern mountains called Qadisha, the Holy Valley. Mist sits in the bottom of it for half the year. The cliffs go up 2,000 feet, and up those cliffs, hidden in the folds of the rock, are monasteries. Dozens of them. Carved cells, tunnel systems, painted chapels, whole villages glued to the side of a canyon you can barely find from the air. And here's what makes this place truly ancient. The cedar forest at the bottom of the Qadisha is the same forest that built Solomon's temple. The same trees the Bronze Age Egyptian pharaohs sent ships to Byblos for. The same cedars Hittite kings turned into chariot poles 3,000 years ago. This forest has been watching empires die since before recorded history. The Maronites moved into that forest. The people who built them are called the Maronites. They're a Christian community pushed out of the lowlands by wave after wave of conquest. Byzantine, Arab, Mamluk, Ottoman. So in the 7th century, they ran for the mountains, and they stayed for 1,300 years. The vertical wasn't just about hiding, it was a weapon. When an Ottoman force tried to come up the valley in the 1800s, the Maronites on the cliffs above rolled rocks down the gorge, a literal avalanche of stones, and the army turned back. A small community on a high ledge can hold a valley against a real army because gravity is on their side. Today, the Qadisha is a UNESCO site. The chapels still have their frescoes. The cells still have their candle smoke. A culture survived because it refused to live where people were supposed to live. So look at the pattern. 12,000 years. Different gods, different enemies, different centuries. And the same answer. Every single time. When the valley is dangerous, you go up. The Natufian cave, the Bronze Age Tell, the Roman fortress in the clouds, the monastery on the rope, the hidden cedar village. This is what the Levant taught the world, that safety is not the easiest ground. Sometimes it's the hardest. Sometimes survival means living in a place that makes no sense, where every drop of water has to be carved out of the rock, and every meal climbs up a ladder. We don't build like this anymore, but the instinct is still in us. The penthouse, the walled compound, the bunker on the hill, same instinct, different rock. Which one of these places would you climb up to? The cliff caves of Carmel, Masada, Saba on the rope, or the hidden valley of Qadisha? Tell me in the comments. For those of you who enjoyed the rope climbing the monks did, I know another video I can warmly recommend.